The HOA tore down my grandfather's dock, thinking they could bully some small-town utility worker who didn't fit in their ritzy lakeside enclave. They had no clue what was coming. As they ripped apart the last piece of my family's legacy, my heart broke, but a quiet grin spread across my face. They'd just made the worst mistake of their lives. See, Vanessa Hartley and her posse of elites didn't know my real job or why I moved to Willow Lake 3 years ago. They were about to learn why you don't mess with someone who's been plotting your downfall for that long. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're reading this from. You won't see this revenge coming. Let me rewind to how this all started. 3 years ago, I bought the budget house in Willow Lake Estates, a sleepy, upscale community nestled along a shimmering lake in Oregon. At $800,000, it was a steal compared to the $4 to $6 million mansions surrounding it, 13 sprawling estates that looked ripped from a luxury real estate catalog. My modest 3-bedroom ranch stuck out like a sore thumb. The seller warned me about the HOA, but I just nodded and said I could handle pushy neighbors. If only he knew I'd been planning this move for years, poring over every property deed and water system schematic I could get my hands on. That dock, the one they destroyed, was the last thing my grandfather, Henry, built before he took his own life. He didn't just pass away, the HOA's ruthless property scam crushed him. He spent months crafting that wooden dock from our backyard to the lake's edge, carving his initials, HT, and mine, JT, into the railing, promising we'd fish there together after I finished college. We never got that chance. Vanessa's predecessor ran a scheme that obliterated my family's finances, driving my grandfather to end it all in our old shed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 3 weeks after I settled in, a crisp letter arrived on Willow Lake HOA stationery, citing an aesthetic violation for my unauthorized waterfront structure. Vanessa Hartley, HOA president and a former state attorney, called an urgent community meeting to address my dock. The letter was dressed up in legal jargon, but the message was clear: tear it down or face $6,000 daily fines. I'd seen this coming. I'd studied Vanessa's tactics for months before buying the house. She always started with small violations like docks, then escalated to bigger issues, forcing sales at rock-bottom prices. Same game, new target. The meeting was held in the community's swanky clubhouse, and walking in felt like stepping into a lion's den. 12 mansion owners sat in a neat semicircle, staring at me like I was a trespasser. Vanessa, in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, stood at the front with a projector displaying photos of my offending dock. "Mr. Thompson," she said in her lawyerly tone, "I'm sure you understand that our community standards protect everyone's property values. Your dock, while sentimental, doesn't meet our guidelines." Nathan Blake, a tech mogul with the biggest estate on the lake, leaned forward, giving me a look like I was dirt on his polished loafers. "James," he said, "let's be real. Your property sits on land worth $2.5 million. We're offering $950,000, a nice profit for a house you bought for $800,000. The room went silent, every eye on me, waiting for me to crack. They didn't know they were facing someone who'd spent a decade preparing for this moment. I played my part perfectly, letting my shoulders slump, my voice tremble. "This is a lot to take in," I said. "The dock means a lot to me, but I hear your concerns. Can I have a few days to think it over? Maybe talk to a lawyer?" Vanessa's smile widened, thinking she'd already won. "Of course, James," she said. "Take your time, but the fines start in 48 hours if that dock stays up." What she didn't know was that those 48 hours were all I needed to set my plan in motion. As the meeting broke up, I casually mentioned I worked for the county, maintaining water systems, just pumps and pipes, nothing fancy, I said with a self-deprecating chuckle. A few neighbors nodded, barely listening. To them, I was just a blue-collar guy out of place in their exclusive world. If they'd paid attention, they might have wondered how a utility worker afforded an $800,000 house, or why I seemed so calm under pressure. That night, I stood on my grandfather's dock for the last time before tearing it down. The wood was worn but sturdy, his initials still etched deep in the railing, HT and JT Jr., framed by a heart. I traced them with my finger and whispered, "Grandpa, they think they've won, just like they did 10 years ago. But this time, they picked the wrong family." Vanessa smirked as I dismantled the dock, watching from her mansion's balcony. "Smart move, James," she called out. "Some folks just don't belong in a place like this." Her phone buzzed with a text from her private investigator. "Thompson's background check done. You need to see this. He's not who you think." 3 streets over, I stood in my garage, studying detailed blueprints of Willow Lake's water infrastructure plans I'd memorized over 3 years. Vanessa's world was about to unravel, and she was still sipping her overpriced coffee, clueless. Meanwhile, Sarah Mitchell, a local realtor who'd sold me the house, knocked on my door with a folder that changed everything. Sarah had her own beef with Vanessa, who'd cost her a $70,000 commission by tanking a sale to a minority buyer with some nonsense about community fit. "She's pure poison," Sarah said, spreading papers across my kitchen table. "Vanessa's drowning in $15 million of debt to her development partners. This whole HOA game isn't just about control, it's her lifeline. If she doesn't close this lakefront deal in 30 days, she's facing bankruptcy and maybe jail." I scanned the numbers, feeling a cold thrill as Vanessa's desperation came into focus. She wasn't just greedy, she was cornered, and cornered people make mistakes. Here's what Vanessa's investigator had uncovered, making her panic. I wasn't some lucky maintenance worker. I graduated from Caltech with a degree in hydraulic engineering and spent 6 years with the Army Corps of Engineers before taking my job as Jackson County's senior water system specialist. I had full access to every pump, valve, and drainage system within a 60-mile radius, plus emergency authority to alter them for public safety. Vanessa's investigator knew I was no ordinary homeowner, but she hadn't figured out why I'd chosen Willow Lake. The truth? I'd spent 2 years researching her operation before moving here. I knew every family she'd ruined, every property she'd stolen through legal tricks, every life she'd shattered for profit. My grandfather was just one of her victims, but his case was personal. She'd broken his spirit along with his bank account. Now, I was here to dismantle everything she'd built on the ruins of families like mine. Willow Lake's mansion sat on reclaimed marshland, kept dry by a network of county pumps running 24/7. Without them, those $6 million estates would be underwater. Guess who held the keys to those pumps? The guy whose grandfather they'd destroyed. The guy they'd just declared war on. A massive storm was brewing off the Pacific, set to hit Oregon in 10 days. Perfect cover for my plan. As a county official, I'd have legal authority to adjust water systems for flood prevention. Every move would look like a heroic response to a natural disaster, not revenge. I tore down the dock that evening, rain soaking through my jacket, while Vanessa watched, gloating. Each plank I removed felt like losing a piece of my grandfather, but I stored every board in my garage, especially the railing with his initials. I'd rebuild it stronger when this was over. For now, I had a score to settle. Vanessa ramped up her attacks, daily violation notices, frivolous lawsuits, even complaints to my county boss about my fitness for duty. She rallied neighbors to harass me. Trash on my lawn, utility shutoffs, parking tickets appearing like clockwork. Nathan Blake showed up at my office, oozing arrogance in a $6,000 suit. "James," he said, leaning too close, "I'd hate for your job to take a hit over a petty dispute. County gigs can be shaky, especially if someone questions your stability." I smiled, thanked him for his concern, and mentally calculated how much water his mansion could take before collapsing. Sarah's intel revealed Vanessa's desperation. She'd leveraged her home, jewelry, even her husband's pension for this development deal, betting everything on forcing me out. Her partners were breathing down her neck, threatening lawsuits or worse if she didn't deliver my property. Sarah handed me a USB drive. "Vanessa's financials," she said. "She's broke, James. $15 million in the hole. This deal's her last shot." I grinned as storm clouds gathered on the weather radar. Vanessa's confidence stemmed from a hidden ace. She'd found my grandfather's suicide note, slipped among documents her husband, David, had leaked to me. He'd called me at 3 a.m., voice trembling. "James, I know what Vanessa did to your grandfather and what she's doing to you. I've got proof of her scam's financials, recordings, everything. She keeps it on a secure server in her office. I know the password, but you have to keep me out of this." The note mentioned the dock and his hope that someone would make the HOA pay. Vanessa thought it proved my premeditation, but it only strengthened my story about the dock's sentimental value. Her mistake was underestimating how much I'd learned about her. While she played legal games, I'd been documenting her crimes: fraud, harassment, bribes to officials. Sarah had recordings, David had records, and I had the storm. A smaller storm hit a week later, my first test. I tweaked the water system just enough to flood Vanessa's basement with 4 inches of water running her hardwood, but looking like a fluke. I showed up in my county truck, playing the dutiful public servant. "Ma'am, looks like storm surge overwhelmed the pumps," I told her, clipboard in hand. "I'll adjust the system to prevent this." Vanessa eyed me suspiciously, but had no proof. She hired engineers to inspect her property, but they found nothing, just aging infrastructure strained by rain. I was bleeding her dry, forcing her to burn cash on useless fixes. Meanwhile, I spent the week before the big storm tweaking the entire water network, setting up cascading failures that would look natural. Nathan was losing his cool, pushing Vanessa to get creative. I overheard him in the clubhouse lot. "We're out of time. He's not breaking. Maybe we need to make him disappear." Vanessa snapped back. "Nothing that'll bring the cops." But I could see her cracking. The psychological warfare was brutal. Neighbors petitioned for my removal, trash piled up on my lawn, and utilities flickered on and off. But every attack just fueled my resolve. They'd done this to my grandfather, and now it was my turn to strike back. Vanessa's final mistake was getting impatient. Nathan showed up at my house one night, dressed like he was hiding from cameras. "James," he growled through my screen door, "we can do this easy or hard, but you're leaving. Vanessa's got connections you can't imagine. We've made people vanish before." That was it, proof they'd crossed into criminal territory. I activated my emergency protocols, notifying my boss of a flood risk in Willow Lake, securing full authority to act. Everything I did now would be legal, documented as disaster response. The storm hit at 7 p.m. on October 12, 2024, and I was ready. Vanessa's security team watched my house, thinking they'd catch me sabotaging something. Instead, they saw a county worker heroically battling the elements. At 9 p.m., I redirected water from upstream channels, overwhelming the pumps. By midnight, lake levels rose 4 feet, triggering natural pump failures. My Caltech training paid off. I knew exactly how much stress those systems could take. Each failure cascaded, looking like a chain reaction of bad luck. Vanessa woke at 2 a.m. to water pooling on her bedroom floor, screaming into her phone. Nathan's cars were floating in his garage, his art collection ruined. The beauty was in the execution. Every failure was logged as an emergency response, every modification disguised as routine maintenance. Sarah, my alibi, documented it all, posing as my assistant. By 4 a.m., the destruction was total. 12 mansions were submerged, $50 million in damages. My house, on a slight rise I'd chosen deliberately, stood dry. Vanessa had a breakdown on her roof, muttering, "He planned this. Every damn detail." She was right, but her security footage showed only a diligent county worker. At dawn, I rolled up in my truck, feigning shock for the news cameras. "No one deserves this," I told them, gesturing at Vanessa's drowned estate. "It's heartbreaking to see such beautiful homes lost to nature." The insurance investigators found nothing suspicious, just storm damage and mechanical failures. Vanessa's empire crumbled faster than her house. Her partners pulled funding, sparking an FBI probe into her finances. Nathan fled to Panama, but was nabbed by Interpol. David filed for divorce, leaking more evidence to save himself. My promotion to county emergency chief came with a $50,000 raise, hailed as a hero for limiting flood damage. Sarah's real estate business boomed, selling lakefront lots to teachers and firefighters as property values crashed. I bought Vanessa's mansion at auction for $600,000, turning her symbol of greed into my family's home. Sarah and I married, naming our unborn son Henry after my grandfather. The rebuilt dock, stronger and longer, became a community centerpiece, its plaque reading, "For all families crushed by greed." New laws, dubbed the Thompson Act, curbed HOA abuses, and my story became a case study in justice. Vanessa's prison letters dripped with denial, claiming I'd framed her. "You ruined an innocent woman," she wrote. But the truth was clear. She'd built her fortune on others' misery, and I'd used physics and patience to bring it down. Her 20-year sentence and $3 million in restitution ensured she'd never hurt another family. Nathan got 14 years, his wealth seized. The neighborhood transformed into a real community. Kids played, neighbors barbecued, and the lake felt alive again. But at the dock's dedication, I saw a face that chilled me, a retired prosecutor who looked like my grandfather. My uncle, Robert, had been hunting Vanessa since Henry's death. "James," he said, "you finished what I couldn't. Your grandfather's proud." Justice had flowed like water, washing away Vanessa's empire. Was it worth a decade of planning? Every drop. What do you think? Did I go too far, or was this justice served cold? Should I have exposed Vanessa legally instead of flooding her world? And who else out there has faced an HOA bully like this? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button if this got your blood pumping, and subscribe for more stories where the underdog flips the game. Where are you reading from? Let's hear it.